All right, everybody, this is Dr. David P. Proden from down here in the historic North Star Recording Studio. And I'm periodically going to do these mic checks because I'm still calibrating things here with the updates to the system. So, and I'm still cleaning down here and sorting. So I don't have, kind of like the camera exactly framed exactly how I want it, but it's pretty close. So what I have accomplished down here, a few things is this morning when I booted up the machine, and this was probably happening yesterday and I didn't pay attention to it. But this morning when I was booting up the machine, it would do 4 beeps. And usually it just does one. And, but it did 4 beeps. And I'm like, well, that's not right. And it would boot and everything would come up. But I'm like, that is new. And that is immediately following the addition of the QHD monitor. So in that one, I used a DisplayPort connection out of my graphics card. So I have 2 DisplayPort, connectors, inputs, and then 2 HDMI, and then also DVI 1. So I use the 2 HDMIs on the side monitors, and then I use the DisplayPort on the QHD monitor. But apparently the DisplayPort, and my tech person who had worked on the computer recently said he doesn't use DisplayPort for anything. So he said it's, his thought is just it's too inconsistent on how it kind of does the handshake and negotiating setup. I guess if you have like a video game console works great, but like computer stuff. So I only have 2 HDMI ports. So what I did is I was going through like my box of cords and adapters, and I found a DVI 1 to HDMI adapter and worked perfect on the back of my computer. And then I used that for one of my side monitors, one of my full high def monitors. And then I just took the straight HDMI to HDMI for like the main monitor, the QHD, the 32-inch, and then for one of my side monitors. But the one where I kind of like all the icons parked was the one where I did the DVI to HDMI adapter on the back of the computer, and then ran an HDMI cord out. So that seems fine. I mean, that's only running 1080. But I think what I would need to do down the road for the new build, which is down the road, to make sure that I would have at least 3 HDMI video outputs on that. But anyway, there were a few things that solved. One was it solved the beeps on startup. And again, that was indicating, doing a little research into the graphics card, that it was having some difficulty with the boot sequence, and then also that DisplayPort connection. So what I could kind of make of it without getting too deep was that it wasn't identifying the monitor like right away, like within a split second. So then there's this process that kind of goes through to alert you, hey, there's something kind of mismatched. So I went through that, got everything again now up and kind of running. It took a while because the cursor locked me in that process. So if you're not aware of what cursor locking is, if you have multiple monitors, it basically locks you onto one monitor. You can't slide your cursor to other screens. And that can be a problem if, for example, your startup is on a different screen than where your cursor is. So it's just kind of a tedious process to unravel that and restore, what your main monitor is, and get your cursor back and be able to get your cursor across to the other screens. Everything works fine now. So really within a day, like I got a lot accomplished. What I also did today I ordered a headset. It is a Sennheiser, um, and it is uh, specific. It's the highest end headset I've ever ordered. I didn't want to go with gaming because I just didn't have any real luck with that. Um, and for what I use it for, uh, I I really think this was a good move. So it is a Sennheiser USB mic, which is really well rated for gain, and then it's UC approved for Microsoft Teams and Zoom and Google and all of that. It is an over the ear mic, so it doesn't have the whole headset approach. I could actually do this for meetings, but I'm okay with that. Because I sometimes thought, if you go into a meeting and you're wearing a headset like this, it can kind of seem overwhelming to like other people in the meeting who most of them either don't have headsets or just using their laptops, or they have earbuds in, and um, so I wanted to kind of go with a little bit of a tone down. And I think it's a very professional look on that. So I'm pretty happy with it. So those will arrive in a couple days. And that kind of hopefully it solves the headset problem. I guess I'll try them out. These I'll have to send back because I didn't order these. They're not available locally. But I am, really pretty confident in what I ordered, and that they'll do a good job for me. So that feels good to have that step kind of done. And then what I'll do is my backup headset, just for a headset, is my H390s, my Logitechs, and those work really well. They're very reliable, but they are a inexpensive, $30 headset. So they sit on the ear and they do hurt your ears after, about 30 minutes. So if you, in a pinch, if you had to use it, it's there. It's going to be reliable. Has really nice mic gain. It's not going to have near the depth of kind of the set that I ordered, but that's my backup. So, I usually have backups of things. I don't have a backup keyboard, although like this keyboard, I need to replace because it's gotten pretty shiny and pretty worn down. So I'll probably just keep this as a backup. I do have like a backup mouse. If I have, so a lot of the stuff I've got kind of backup systems for. Actually, I do have a backup webcam also. But anyway, so I wrangled the wiring today, and I did I think a pretty good job on that. And I went a little more conservative than how I had things in the past. So, meaning I didn't put as many Velcro ties on. I do have like little zip bags that surround the cables, if you can kind of get enough of them together, and then you can like zip it up. And that really cleaned up like what's right in front of me. So, but then when everything kind of like comes together where it plugs in, that's still it's still pretty active over there. But I have it all together, and when I clean that, I just take compressed air and blow that down. So, but I think that's pretty good. So, I have the wiring done. I started to put the office back together, and then I'll be able to get that done tomorrow. And then I'll also go through and do a thorough cleaning, like make sure the floor is Swiffered, and then the Swiffer wet cleaner and stuff like that too. I don't want to do any of that now because I'm still like cleaning, so there's dust that's getting on the floor, but I am restoring items back to my desk. So I think by the end of tomorrow night, and for sure by Tuesday, like the office will be all put together. And that is just really the steps of sorting through kind of everything. So I need to do that. But, some pretty substantial progress down here. So when I started out this morning, and and I was having the problems with that 4 beeps, I mean, that took me like 3-4 hours to figure that out. So, and then finally to just abandon the display port and convert that DVI over to another HDMI port for the full high def monitor on the side. So everything works. Again, really liking this QHD, this Dell P3225DE. It has a very nice monitor. So it was a good decision to go with that. And I was thinking too, I was like, there's no way my my graphics card, my NVIDIA 1060 GTX, so 6 gig on board, is struggling with this to go to the one QHD monitor and the 2 full high defs. It's like that should be easy in that wheelhouse, that it should be able to handle that. And it did. So it was just kind of that display port, which was screwing things up. And then I also was using my UCam video recorder. And that was the one I kind of was my go-to, although like Streamline, or I should say StreamYard, has a really nice way to do that, to do recording. So you're not ghosting at all on the screen. And this will probably be my go-to if I have to do a few recordings like for a university class or something. But what I'm going to do is, I tried UCam because it was very, very glitchy on the video, but not on the audio. And that's too where I realized, well, one is I don't want it up on the QHD screen because it's kind of like processing real time, because it doesn't save to the cloud. It saves to the drive, which is fine because it's an NVMe drive, which should be blazing fast. But for some reason, UCam's been out there a while. I don't want to update to like the deluxe because then you lose the 10. And there are a lot of features in the 10 that I like. So basically what I would have to do is to just use a different recording program, which would just, I think, be StreamYard. And StreamYard then would record it to MySpace on the web, and then I would download it back as an MP4 and then do whatever I needed to do in Camtasia. But I don't do a lot of this stuff anymore, so it's not that critical. I was also checking the mic, and again, this mic cover isn't designed. It's not for this mic. It's for like the partner mic of it. And the reason I put this one on is it's better with plosives, or like the P's and B's. But it is larger, so the microphone is actually down quite a ways. So this is just like nothing up here. So that's one of the things I think was causing issues, was not having the mic first high enough and kind of close enough to my face. That is one thing, like, I have to give credit when I had the Blue Yeti, even though that's, kind of more of an entry level like broadcaster mic, and this is steps up. The Yeti did a really nice job of picking sound up, and you did not have to have it like an inch away. But I didn't like the, to me, it didn't have that professional appearance that I was kind of going for, and the Shure also is just a deeper sounding mic. But the Yeti, did a good job, and the Yeti was better than the Shure in being away from you and still capturing. So that's, I don't have that mic anymore, but so anyway, I am, close to having the office kind of put together, and then kind of that deep cleaning. Hopefully that'll be done for sure by Tuesday. And then I need to go through and again, kind of just do some sorting and stuff like this. I think so I was listening last night, and this mic wasn't giving me the audio that I wanted it to, and I can't quite figure that out yet. So it does in some instances, like if I just record to StreamYard and it goes into the cloud and StreamYard in my file, and then I can download it back, it sounds perfect. So I know like it's capable, So there, I had a little bit of a concern when I had my main operating system drive cloned. So our local tech business, which I speak very highly of, replaced the OS drive, which was a solid state drive, but it was from 2019, kind of an earlier solid state drive, with the card drive, the NVMe, which is faster. And in that process, there were a few kind of ghosts in the machine. So what I mean by that is, um, I noticed, so everything did like boot up and it looks like it did, like the icons are still on the screen and programs open, but I noticed some redundancy in drivers, especially like audio drivers. So I had to work through that. And I think I've made progress on it. And actually, I think getting this new headset will be good because I haven't had Sennheiser before. So it's not going to, when it installs its drivers and assigns drivers, um, it'll be unique to that microphone. I think what happened with I think the HyperX still, like, the microphone has low gain on that, but um, because I had the HyperX 2, the Cloud 2, I think it was kind of confusing some of the drivers on that a little bit. But I've seen a few things which I've had to kind of address, but not anything very big. So I did a practice kind of meeting today with the whole setup here. Um, and my daughter used her Chromebook, and then she, logged in as, someone attending the meeting. And then I was leading the meeting for like 5 minutes. And I'm just like, I just want you to listen. How does my voice come? Is it, loud? Is it clear? And does the video look good? And she was like, yep. So, and then I could see her fine and I could hear her, everything was good. So the next step will be, once I get the headset, is I'm going to have her in this office and then kind of leading a meetings, and then I'll use her Chromebook upstairs, and then I'll be able to hear, is the mic gain, is it loud enough? Is it clear? How does the video look? Is any lag in the video? So I can see it from the client side, which I can't do right now. So, that's going to be a plus. So yeah, I am really liking these updates, to the office so far. I need to go through my books, my physical books, because I have too many. So I need to thin those down. I already did the first round on that. And then also with my books, School of Errors and the Velocity of Information, I want to keep, a couple extra hard copies and a couple paperbacks, but I have more now, um, more copies than I have use for. So I want to figure out how I can donate some of those copies. So I don't know if that would be libraries or, do you donate a book like that to a prison? I mean, we have like, so that's one thing. You watch these little videos about people, and I had Larry Lawton on, America's Biggest Jewel Thief, and what they'll tell you is, like, in prison, you do a lot of reading because there isn't a lot else to do, and a lot of, like, trying to physical fitness, right? So, and I assume both of those books would be appropriate for a prison library. We have a federal, where Jeffrey Dahmer was murdered. That prison is in the town where I live here. So, but anyway, I want to get some of my books, kind of out or into some libraries, or I don't know. I've got to think that one out a little bit. So, but I do have copies, like my daughters have their hard back signed copies, from Dad and things. But you never know like how long those will stay in print. I mean, with the publisher and how easy it'll be. But there's also not much value in keeping, extra copies, beyond a couple display copies. And then I basically have like some copies I take to the university with me that I have all marked up, those are kind of my work copies. But yeah, so I will be getting some of those out. And I want to do that before too long, while the books are still quote unquote kind of current. So it was hot today, very hot and humid, in the 90s. It'll be hotter tomorrow. And, it wasn't comfortable to be outside today. And the mosquitoes were still hanging out too. So you had that. And I like hot weather, but today just wasn't happening for me. And I don't think tomorrow's going to be a day that I'm going to want to be outside. The lawns are starting to go dormant, so we might get rain overnight. And to be like almost to the 1st of August and still have a green lawn, it's interesting because I just mowed a couple days ago and it hasn't rained in a week, but I had to spend about 20 minutes cleaning the grass out from under the mower because it was very similar to if you mow a wet lawn. But the reason is it's so humid right now, the last few weeks, that the lawn, even in the afternoon, is still damp, even though it hasn't rained for like 6 days, right? So and it keeps growing. So I'm going to go through and I'll probably mow like Tuesday morning. And if we get rain, I'll mow it the height I have the mower. If we don't, I'll raise it up one, and go through and do a mow kind of. But otherwise, yeah, this is the time of year when the lawns start to slow down. And then I kind of cut back the edging too, because if you do too much edging and it slows down, then it starts to recede and you get a gap between like, the curb and the lawn and the driveway and the lawn. And yeah, so I guess no one's coming to the chat tonight. Which is kind of interesting. Not one person. So, but yeah, so I'm testing out the mic. So here we go. I've got it a little bit closer, but see, like the thing is, again, I like this mic a lot, but it's covering up my mouth when I'm doing, this right now. So I think the look is very nice with this mic. I think, for some meetings and like with this headset, and this is also my headset for like music. This works well, but I think that's why I also wanted to go with a professional grade headset. And so this headset I ordered is a headset that they have like in 911 dispatch centers. So it is of that grade and of that kind of make and model. So, that you really have the clarity coming through. And then like on the over the ear is good, but I wanted a little bit of a lighter setup. So I'm happy with what I did. So I think that was a good choice. And then a week from tomorrow, August 4th, my desktop goes in, and then it'll be upgraded from Windows 10 or changed, I guess, operating system. I use the word upgrade kind of cautiously with that, but to 11 Pro. But I don't think I have anything else I'm going to really do down here in the studio. I was thinking about a large digital wall clock that would be like green LED, because it's, when I'm in meetings and stuff, it is kind of hard to track down the time sometimes because I have a desk timer right here. And so that usually works pretty well. But I think it would be a little easier to have a large, bright, like green LED clock up on the wall, like up kind of where I'm looking up there. So I have to think that one out. But and I think I don't know, in my main system here with the big, I can get the time to come up. I don't know when I'm running the native software, like Zoom or some stuff like that, how easy it is to do like a overlay. Sometimes I'll just throw the clock up on the screen, one of the side screens, so I can kind of keep track of what time it is. Because when you're teaching, you give the agenda and you need to stick very close to the schedule. And then also, so you have breaks but when people are presenting, right, say you have 12 minutes to do your presentation and, they get to 12 minutes and they're only halfway through, you got to be like, whoa, like you have to wrap this up because there are 9 other people who need to present. So, that's something where I need very clearly to kind of have some better cueing on what the time is. But I can do like a countdown timer. I mean, I've used this thing a ton, actually bring this into when I'm at the university. The problem is it's not that big. So, all right, everybody. So this is Dr. David Prodan signing off. It is Sunday, July 27, 2025. We could get rain overnight. That would actually be good. And I'm continuing to kind of tweak some settings here in the setup. And I think, it's getting better. I'm looking forward to using that headset. It's interesting too, because like this office chair I've had 20 years. And, last year I went in because I was determined to get a better office chair. So I went to these places in Madison, Wisconsin that have used office furniture, and they'd be like, this chair was like $800 new, and now it's like $200, and I didn't find a single chair that I thought was better than this, as far as like back support, adjustable arms, and it was really weird. So I was like, I am not ready to give up this chair. And the arms I'm going to have replaced. I buy these little sleeveys that go over them. That cracked, but I think these arms are pretty uniform. There's a lot of websites that sell, like there's this 4-inch on center, 2-screw setup. And if I could do that, the chair will work fine. The pneumatic cylinder hasn't worked for years. So I bought this kit. It's like for $12 or something on Amazon, where you basically put these links over the pneumatic, the piston, and it just then however high you want the chair, and then that's how high the chair stays. And I still have like one link left, so I could raise this up a little bit, and I might do that. I might raise this chair just like a ½ inch, but it's pretty good right now. It's been this way for years, and that was really awesome to be able to do that. So I do have like my little shampooer. Well, I guess it's a regular size shampooer, but it has the attachment. So I'll go through and I'll shampoo this and the fabric and get it all cleaned up. But yeah, the chair, it was really a surprise to me to look at these chairs, these used office chairs, and sit in them, and I wasn't impressed. And I was like, if I got rid of this chair for one of those, I would be kicking myself for doing that. It wouldn't be good. And it was one of those things too, where like you'd ask people questions, they didn't really know like a lot about the chairs. So even though like they maybe own the business, so I'm like, sell me on this chair. the one place they had like a ton of like power strips, not like the shock protectors, surge protectors, not those, just like multiple outlets. I do need to replace my surge protector, update that. So I'll have to kind of put that on a list. But yeah, so I'm feeling better because I did get the cord management kind of under wraps today. That was a little bit overwhelming to look at. And the way I've kind of have the PC set up, I like things. And again, on the monitor, this new monitor has a drop down. You just press it in, a drop down USB 3.0 and then a drop down USB-C 90 watt. And they both face out toward me. So I don't know what I would ever do with those because I just don't. I don't have USB-C on my PC though. So I guess if I ever needed that, I could run it through that monitor. So the monitor is interesting too, because you can run Ethernet directly to the monitor. So if you're running it as a, I guess, display, I don't know. I don't really understand what the purpose of that was. There are some things on here which I'm like, I don't quite get it. But again, it's for office. Anything with a P in front of it's a Dell that's designed for office. So it's not a gaming monitor. So that's why I was a little thrown off. But I'm like, I'm not going to worry about that. Everything's doing good. So yeah, more cleaning, sorting down here, and then I need to take on the room across from me. It's the furnace room. There's things in there that need to be organized and kind of tossed out. And yeah, so it definitely now has a feel of the begin of the end of summer, which I don't like to think about the end of summer in Wisconsin because I don't like winter. But I really like, late spring and summer. But anyway, we'll see. And yeah. So this is Doc signing off. I'm going to listen to this, see if my audio's better. And I'll be using the headset in a few days. And hopefully I'll do it a little bit earlier, and maybe a couple of people can stop in and let me know how that sounds. It's one of these things too, I'm also, I wish I had a mic, a setup where I didn't have the mic like right in my face like this. But anyway, I just don't know how much I would be on the air going forward, with the Safety Doc podcast being done. And unless I'm interviewed by somebody, but I don't, unless Ron Wayne brings me on a show. But I don't know what's going on, So basically I'm kind of like doing a lot of updates because I intend to use the studio at kind of its regular capacity, for my university work and consulting and stuff like that. Hey, it's Riggs. Hey, buddy. For probably 3 years yet. And then this machine I had custom built in 2018 and have it periodically updated. I had the 2 drives put in a few weeks ago, and then I'll have it updated to Windows 11 Pro and a week from tomorrow. But then, in 2030, 2031, when Windows 11 won't be supported, like this machine, will be 12 years old, even though it has really good components. I had it built top of the line. I'll have a new custom build, which will probably be the machine that I'll have for a long time then, because I won't be doing any quote unquote kind of work on the machine anymore. and it's just such a different um, environment. It's so different of an architecture for technology when you have like I have the Samsung Ultra, so I can type emails out on that phone, um, there's just so much more that I can do on that phone that I never kind of imagined. It's got the stylus and stuff, so I don't need to use the Office as extensively as I did, years ago. So, but anyway, yeah. If you're, hopefully the headset will be a big improvement, and then this 32-inch QHD monitor was a very smart move to do that. Yeah, it is. And something I realized too with UCam, that's the program I use to just do videos for like the university, and then I throw them into Camtasia and kind of edit. But I think QHD bogs that program down, not the graphics card. I think the program has a hard time handling it. So then I just move it over to one of the side full high def screens because it doesn't have to be on the screen in front of me. And actually, when I record, I usually like bring over my notes and overlay it anyways. So I'm not looking at the screen, like me on the screen as it's recording. So I think I've got that figured out. So, hey, it's the Armored Ghost. Look at this. What has been your experience with Californians? Are they dangerous or safe? I don't know. So I know quite a few Californians who are very good folks, but I have not been to California for like 25 years. So I do not know, my friend, of what the deal is. So, but yeah, so I'm going to, wrap things up here. I'm going to be recording, more often until I get things kind of calibrated here with the setup. And I said I did order the Sennheiser headset today. And it is the highest end headset I've ever owned or ever will own, but I use it for my work, and my Cloud 2 was okay, my HyperX, but again, that's a gaming headset. And looking back at some of the videos and stuff that I made, the university stuff where you're in meetings, it does definitely look like you're wearing a gaming headset versus like this is the Sennheiser over the ear and more subtle. I don't think anyone really cares that much, but for me, it was noticeable. I don't want to have that look. Like this look is very serious, right? I mean, so you do a meeting like this, and then the background is cleared up or something, or I blur the background a little bit. Like whoever's in on that meeting usually, whoa, like Dave's got quite a setup there. So, it does add a gravitas to that. Do you have fond memories of the 80s and 90s? I guess I do. As a kid growing up in the 70s, 80s, and then 90s at the college. So this is my headset what Joe Rogan would use if he was dirt poor. Yes. I watched Joe Rogan, when he does interviews, the person has the microphones. Well, of course, he has multi-million-dollar sound studio people and stuff like that. So I don't know. Rogan uses mics though, right? I mean, I watched a Rogan interview, the Joe Rogan podcast today, and he's got the headset. So I think it's very similar to this, but of course it's not USB. But I think it's a Shure mic that he uses and his guest. So I always thought studio. Today I was kind of just noticing, like the guest is always center in the screen. They're not in the top 2/3. Like their head is always centered, and then it's just the velvet red curtain in back of the burgundy curtain. And you don't notice it, I guess, as much because it's like, shot on an angle video wise. But I noticed it today. I was just like, that just seems like that should be done differently. I'm not criticizing his show, but I'm like, that seems to go across the um it seems to not line up with kind of the technique of, like, right now how I'm being recorded kind of follows the rules of thirds, like that your head should be in the top third, and like, your head should be just below the top of the cutoff. And but anyway, I don't know. So have I lived in multiple states? Yes, crazy, crazy, including the state of confusion. So is the headset what? Yeah, I think we answered that, right? So, I looking back to the 80s, just a lot of, I remember playing Little League Baseball in the 80s and very early 80s, and just how much fun that was. And the baseball diamond had like a wood snow fence, and it was a manual scoreboard. So they would pay somebody like a couple bucks a game, and they just had a box of numbers, and then they would put it up each inning of, like, home and away. So you had to stand out there on this wooden scoreboard, um, and hang the numbers. That was very interesting. There wasn't a digital scoreboard back. I mean, there were digital scoreboards obviously back in the 80s, but not. We had one baseball diamond in the town I grew up in, which now they have like a minor league quality diamond that is opening, I think, yet this year. They've been working on it for like 2 years. They built like a tunnel under the road that's all paved to like get to it, and it's pretty it's pretty darn cool. Um, yeah, and yes, and there were so like the baseball diamond in the 80s, it was just this hodgepodge of like lights. So you'd have a pole, and there might be like some lights up there from like a car lights, and then like, floodlights, and then if a light burned out, then there'd be a new light, and like nothing was cohesive, like nothing matched. But at the same time, it was just a lot of fun. And then, you could get candy for a quarter right at the concession stand. And but yeah, so growing up in the 80s was really cool. I enjoyed that. I remember the day cable TV came to our town. That was in the early 80s. And so everybody got like the full cable package for like 3 months. And then you'd get this little magazine, right? And it would show you like at 2 o'clock, Star Trek II, The Wrath of Khan is going to be on. And then again, it'll be on at 11 o'clock at night. So like that was pretty exciting to always, be like, whoa. And that was the first movie that I ever watched on cable TV. And we had the big, cathode ray TVs. It didn't have flat screens back then. So it was just a regular big piece of furniture. And it was Star Trek II, The Wrath of Khan. I think that came out in 82. So maybe like cable came to our town like in 83. Before that, it was just, you had 3 channels, and you had to go up and physically turn the TV to like 7, 9, or 12. But then we had cable, man. That was something. The Wrath of Khan. Yeah, I remember. Did any normal person actually worry about the Soviets in the 80s? I want to say yes. First of all, if you go back, and I wrote about that in the Velocity of Information, like the 80s was just really thick with Sting, I Hope the Russians Love Their Children Too, the song, Nina, 99 Red Balloons, Rocky IV, right? Where all of this tension, Cold War tension, and then, especially, go back and watch Rocky IV and when that came out, of, the U.S. as the protagonist and Soviet Union as the antagonist. And I think Chernobyl was, personally for me, I remember So Chernobyl was 86, I think. And I remember the local news covered it when radioactive particles were identified in Wisconsin that were from Chernobyl. Because they did work their way across the entire, I think, US. I don't know globe wise. But eventually, and so the questions were like, what does this mean for what? And it, I guess, it ultimately really didn't mean anything. But there was a question that came up, and I still remember this from the news, and it was asking, should we take like Geiger counters out on baseball fields and playing fields and parks and stuff to make sure they're safe? And I guess what you'd have to do then, naturally, like rain and water hosing down would take care of those things. And it wouldn't be in a density to kind of cause real problems. But I do remember that and just kind of being like, whoa. And if you saw the movie 1983, the day after that ABC News, the nuclear war, that really had you thinking. But yeah, on a day-to-day basis, not really. It was just this big mystery. We had a kid from Russia as a foreign exchange student in high school. I didn't know him very well, but the one thing though, he really never wanted to talk about like the perceived tensions between America and the Soviets. He was just like just a high school kid doing high school stuff. So super sci-fi in the 80s, Terminator and Aliens. Yeah, wasn't that something? Those movies, and then like Back to the Future. So just as a fun sci-fi. Real Genius with Val Kilmer, I thought was a really fun movie in the 80s. So just a lot of great movies. I remember with my friends, going to the theater a lot in the 80s for these, new releases, and Indiana Jones, so yeah, it was really a great time. And affordable. That's to some extent, because if you bought like a compact disc back then from Camelot Music in the mall, it was like $10 maybe. And the thing is, like, you're working part-time job, you're making $5, where today, relatively speaking, like music has become quite inexpensive because you would just download or you just play it off of YouTube. So to actually build like a collection, an audio collection, was pretty expensive back then relative to also like what you make working part-time as a kid. So that was one kind of mismatch in the 80s, is some of those things were some of the technology or the stereo components and stuff were pretty expensive versus like what they are today. And just, I guess people kind of, have moved away from some of that stuff. And then the 90s, the college years, early 90s, were a lot of fun. And again, things were really affordable. You didn't have the inflation of today. I remember my first semester of college, I still have the receipt, the itemized receipt for it. 18 credits, $700. That was it. So, and then what was it? I did that, and dun, 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 dun. What else? Oh, my roommates and I, when we rented an apartment in college, and I think we paid like each one of us like $700 a semester. So the rent was like $2,000, $2,500 a semester, like for the apartment, and heat was included. I think electric was included. We had to pay like cable, but it wasn't a very good apartment. It was an actual apartment building. It wasn't like a house made into an apartment, but as college kids, it was close to campus and it was super cheap, which fit the bill. Now, um, it is very, my daughter's a college student and her apartment is quite expensive. Um, but yeah, so there were just a lot of things like vehicles were really, pretty affordable. You could do your own work on vehicles back then too. You didn't have all the crazy electronics going on. Um, so it was a good time to go through. But I'm also amazed now, like being 54 years old and thinking I would have never thought I'd be sitting in like a like sitting here with a 32-inch high QHD monitor in front of me, flanked by some full eye diopters. You have your own studio. You can have your own show. That I would have a phone, right? That you can take these incredible photos with. That you can bring up a weather map if there's storms. I mean, just things that you wouldn't have thought possible. I mean, I remember being in elementary school when the elementary school got the first VHS recorder, and it was in the library, and it was this big monstrous machine that was on this cart, and then above it was the TV. That was always a bizarre thing, right? You'd have this massive TV back in the 70s, in schools, sitting, 6 feet off the ground on this cart, this wheeled cart that moved from room to room, so you could like show videos. And the center of gravity for that thing had to be like 4 feet up, and how that never tipped over, so it's beyond me. But yeah. Did you perceive social capital was higher in the 80s? Wow. Yeah, I do, because I had a couple classmates that had um, car phones, so wired car phones, and that was like a big deal. And if you had a Mustang, that was big deal. I don't know if that's so much social capital or yeah. And I think in the 80s, like, because you didn't have the reach of, people like starting a YouTube channel or stuff like that, where people from all over the world you could influence, or you could be influenced by. You had to be pretty savvy with your kind of local network, right, of building social capital. And I also lived in a small town, but yeah, social capital. It's interesting. I mean, one thing I would remember from the 80s is like with my friends, you try to be out every night. I mean, we go to the neighboring town, which was, my town had 1,500 people, the neighboring town had 30,000. So you drive over there and just be driving around or going to Taco Bell or, whatever. But it was to be seen, have your car all shiny, if you could afford it, have nice rims on your car and a stereo. And I grew up again in northern Wisconsin, so you'd want a big K40 CB antenna. Like that was kind of one of those things. Again, those aren't really social capital necessarily. But yeah, I mean, it's hard to answer that question, I guess. I'd have to think about that. It's Z. Nothing is open late night anymore. You're right. That was something too, growing up in the 80s. I mean, it could be 1:00 in the morning and you could still stop at Taco Bell. And I know we stopped at McDonald's, like at least at midnight. And there were a lot of places that were still open. And you're right. And I don't really, for me, that's not as big of a thing anymore, because I typically don't stay up late. Like this is some of the latest I've stayed up in a while. But I am just trying to I'm trying to get this whole system kind of up and calibrate it, too. So I'll listen back on this. I thought last night the audio wasn't great. But again, I think it has to do with the drivers, and I made some updates today, so I'm hoping things are better. It's not this mic because I record it straight to StreamYard and then send the audio back to me and listen to it. It was great. So I don't know. I don't know what's going on. I don't think anything is like in big bad shape. And again, I ran like a Zoom meeting, and my daughter was on her new Chromebook, and she was saying audio is really good, video is really good. So I'm like, okay, that one is good. So Z's saying, I've got a strange one for you, Doc. I saw a video of what non-English speakers hear when we talk. That's interesting. So I never thought about that, to be honest. So there's another David Perodin, but David D. Perodin, who is a professor, and we look a little bit alike, and he teaches in Thailand, and I think he's from Britain. So he has published more than I have, and he publishes in linguistics, and I have a background in speech language pathology and linguistics. So we have like a lot of similarity. People contact me like 2-3 times a week thinking I'm him, because and they're like, hey, like, would you present at this conference? Would you look over this paper? Would you do whatever? I'm like, dude, you got the wrong guy. So I got a hold of him, like a year ago. And I said, how do you want me to handle this? Because like, does this happen to you? Does anyone contact you thinking you're me? He's like, no. I'm like, okay. Well, I get contacted a lot. And so is there like an email for you that I should give them saying, oh, I think you've got the wrong person. Here's the person that you're looking for. So, and I think he just said no. I think he just said, just email him back and say, I think you've got the wrong person. So, but yeah, I got contacted again today. So it's one of those things like when your doppelganger is doing like awesome things. So, where like if anyone confuses me with him, like I'm kind of getting the benefit of that, because that guy's just working tirelessly on all this presenting and publishing, and it's really complex stuff that he's been doing. So it's kind of funny in that way. So I'm like, not to let you down, I have Safety Doc's done a lot of cool stuff too, but I'm not the person you're looking for. So when their brains convert the language to their own. Oh, never really. Yeah, I don't know. Never really thought about it. I don't know if you guys are familiar with the Y files. AJ Gentile. So if you go to YouTube and you just search Y files, and it's got a red icon, and again, it's a guy and there's a fish. A little goldfish thing is kind of like a sidekick, but he's been on Joe Rogan. He gets into a lot of these, Mars conspiracies, and is the moon hollow, but he's very, very detailed and professional. I mean, great in how he does all of these things. So that's one of those things that's just amazing too, to think of a person can take something like that and build something that is just far better than what the media could produce, because they have to broaden everything for audiences and commercials and stuff like that, and the quality you can get. I have probably like 3 or 4 YouTube channels that I watch every day, like they do their little 20-30 minute updates. And I start off every morning, like with one as I'm kind of getting ready with breakfast. And so Z's saying, I was just watching that before here. He's doing a live stream. Yeah. So AJ Gentile. So he's outstanding. So again, it's one of those things that I think about modern times of like, if when I was in college, someone would say, there'd be people who are going to come up with their own channels, and some of them, will be entertainment purely, um, and but some of them are going to be like very strong, um, with a kind of research and literacy and professional delivery, component to them, and it's going to be like them. I think AJ has mentioned, that he has people now that he's, become a huge, YouTuber that do editing and work with him and probably like a lot of B-roll stuff. And, but yeah, there's a YouTuber I follow, Cliff, the Wandering Woodsman. And this week is his 10th year on YouTube. And he's become very substantial, the Wandering Woodsman. Start out with, just going to some state parks in Pennsylvania 10 years ago, and like some abandoned mines, and he also talks about the history of it, and very down to earth and professional. And then, over time he upgrades his equipment, and now he has Patreon, and so he goes to other states and does this, and people send him the stuff, like the sign in the back, the safety dock, which is a 3D dimensional metal sign that was made by Coop, who is a friend of the show, who just had watched and said, I want to make that for you. It has LEDs and really awesome. But yeah, so I do think we're in this time. And I was kind of thinking the last few days about like AI, and not that I'm really I want to get too deep into that because I probably want to get to bed soon, but all this kind of merging into this AI environment, there are going to be amazing positives of that, especially like from medical, or I was reading like in search and rescue now that there are these drones that have LiDAR on them, and they're tuned so they can identify, literally like in 30 seconds, they can go over an area the size of a football field and see through debris and get to what would be the composition of humans, right? The human flesh, and identify people, So back when we had thermal cams, like we thought that was really awesome. And now you get to this level where I live here in Wisconsin. A big thing with LiDAR, just in the last 2-3 years, is that they found these effigy mounds. Wisconsin has a large number of effigy mounds. UW-Madison, close to me, has the most effigy mounds in the world for a campus. Where I live, we have effigy mounds that I can bike to. So, these 1,000-year-old mounds in the shape of a bear or an eagle or a snake or whatever. But some of these just were never discovered. They've been in woods, and the LiDAR finds them. And other ones have been plowed over, but the LiDAR still can detect that the soil was there's a little bump in the soil, and it can do the outline. So that's pretty cool to think of some of that. And just medically, to have AI and robotic assisted surgeries and the ability to 3D print things into that. I think there are going to be some just amazing things that we're going to experience. I don't want to get into like the good and the bad and all that, but I am really interested in where some of the stuff is going. I also was, there, watch a couple of YouTubers, and there's a college student who is unable to drive because she had a spinal cord injury, and she was talking about she got a vehicle. It'd be like $90,000 to put the equipment in it in order to drive. And the vehicle can't be more than 3 years old and can't have more than 36,000 miles. But she was saying, autonomous vehicles would really help me. And I think also for, and I'm not saying it has to be electric vehicle. I'm not going into that, either one of those. I'm just saying like the ability for autonomous transportation, I think, has huge potential for people who want to use that. It could be because of disability. It could be age. It could be, just if you're in an area, right, that you're unfamiliar with. So the vehicle's going to get you around. But I think there's some real awesome potential to that. I mean, I think of my neighbor when we moved down here. I mean, both of them have passed on and the house had been sold and all of that. But I remember like toward the end, I would go over and I would like clear out their driveway in winter, the snow and stuff like that. And I could see like when they would park their car, like they would rub up against the side of their garage, because you could see the splintered wood. And I was thinking, man, if they had like an autonomous option of a vehicle, what that would mean for them. Cause I think the wife had to get dialysis. So, and then, yeah, she did. And that was one thing. I would make sure I got over there and clean their driveway out because a cab would come and pick her up in the last like year or two of her life. And I just said, don't worry about it. Like, I'll make sure I get that for you. But yeah, we have autonomous cars all over the place. So, yeah, anyway, I think there's really cool. So Z's got a new thermal camera. So, yeah. And, I think e-bikes, right, are really, personally, I think they're really cool. I haven't made the investment yet in an e-bike, but I will at some point. So, I mean, I was just thinking today of like, these, just the ability to have like a flat screen TV in your house that is, high definition. And if anything happens to it, it's not the end of the world because, they don't cost as much as what they did. But in the old days, like a big TV, like a Sony Trinitron, probably in like the early 90s, that thing would cost you $1,000 and it would probably be like 3.5 feet deep and it would weigh 150, 200 pounds. And, but yeah, I was at Best Buy in the store a few days ago. That's when I was checking out headphones stuff. And that's when I made the decision. Now I've got to just go higher end. But, and I was literally just stunned by the TV displays. That you have something that's an inch thick and, it's 8 feet long by, 5 feet high. I mean, whatever the 16:9 aspect ratio, and how it'd be like 4K, 8K. I mean, it was just, I literally was like just frozen in place and in awe because I'm like, I obviously have a flat screen TV, but I bought it 12 years ago. It still works fine. So there's no need to replace it. 40-inch. And, like TV's not a big part. We just have one TV. It's not kind of a big part of our lives. But I was like, well, if that thing gave up the ghost, like, man, I mean, these new TVs, how bright they are and and just something bigger, and imagine watching like a football game on that. I mean, it'd be like, whoa. So I think I was sharing, I got the Samsung Ultra S25 phone, which is the flagship, it's the top of the line. And first time I ever did that, I usually would get the one down, like the Plus model. and but in the flagship they put everything. So it's got the stylus, it's bigger, and it's the QHD screen, and it's brighter. And but one thing that stood out was the sound. And I was playing something, and I thought, whoa, like I've got the sound way too high. And literally it was like on number 3, you know, out of like what, I get 25 or 30. I mean, the how much volume, quality sound comes out of that phone blew me away. And when I was working in the office, because I had this system shut down, I just had my phone and was listening to some podcast, just had it up on a table on the side here. And, and the battery life too. I mean, barely, brought it down. I didn't have it connected to any Bluetooth speaker, nothing like that. So it's really amazing. If we really kind of just take a few moments to think about how things have changed, technology wise, so, yeah, anyway, so convert your existing bike to an e-bike. Yeah. Yeah, obviously could do that. The thing is, I would not want to spend the time to convert, even if it's easy. But my traditional bike is I call it the mule, because I have, the bags on it. And, that's my workout bike. It's really there for fitness. And if I got an e-bike, that would be for fun. And I would get the e-bike like that could go the fastest. So I would get that with the idea that I'm not really going to pedal this. I just want this thing to like go. If you get an e-bike, so my neighbor is very into high-end bikes, like, $6,000 and up, and also e-bikes. He said, though, the e-bike is heavier, and then also you have to get a different bike, a carrier for it. So I have a hitch on my car, and then I have my carrier for my regular bike. But he said, no, you'd have to get a different carrier, for, which I guess isn't that big of a deal. But so, yeah, I'm very interested in that. It's not going to happen this year. I'm not going to do that. But so, what I should do is I should ask him, Steve. I should just say, Steve, do you mind if I take your bike? Like, can I drive? Can I drive this around for a couple hours? I mean, I'm sure he would say yes. So, as I've shared the story of Steve before, he's a little older than I am, and Steve will bike to like Texas, like bike, not e-bike, like just bike. So, and he'll have places he'll stay, and because I said, where do you stay? And he's like, usually like a motel. He said sometimes he'll stay outside, but he said, usually then just and bring the bike in with me, and so I can take a shower and stuff like that. And but yeah, like literally biking to like Texas. Again, we're in Wisconsin, so I'm like, yeah, not really for me. But as I have shared previously, like I used to bike 100 miles in a day, and then I kind of got more into like that 70. But I haven't biked this year, and a big part of that was how debilitating the pneumonia was that I had last fall. That lasted months, and then I had a relapse like in spring, and it was just like, nope, this year's just not going to be happening. Setting up an Antminer to do solo lottery mining. I have to do a few resets. Talk to you. Okay, got it. All right. So I was talking, to so the tech person in town here who also, sells like, used computers and stuff like that. And he didn't have many used PCs when I was in there a couple of weeks ago. And we're talking about, he said, they're just not around because people are working from home. So businesses aren't, buying like the enterprise level machines anymore because people just, have their own laptops. And he said the machines that are now being kind of cycled out of big businesses, where they're like, oh, here's 500, PCs we're getting rid of. He said they're being bought by crypto miners. So they're being, soaked up. So he's like the machines that he used to get on a pretty regular basis and then refurbish them and, put them out for a few $100s. It's just not happening. They're just not there anymore. And that trend is probably like that'll probably never change. You're just not going to see that. It's kind of like, when I was growing up, like used TVs were a pretty big thing. We had a TV place in town, kind of a family run thing. And they had a section where it was used TVs. And if you could get a pretty good deal, like on a used TV, then put it in your rec room or something. But I mean, like today, no one wants a used TV, right? Because a new TV is very cheap and it's just going to be better quality. But that was really a big thing back in the day. But I think this whole thing with PCs and is starting to kind of crest where the actual PC itself is, like the build and that I have over here, like it's just going to be very rare down the road. So, all right, I am shutting this down. Again, I'm just testing things out here. So everybody have a good night. This is the Safety Doc, and I'm out of here.